I work part-time for the Arkansas State Park System leading guided nature walks. And honestly, until 3 weeks ago, it was the most chill job I've ever had. My name's Craig, I'm 36, and I also do some freelance IT stuff from home, but the hikes are what I actually look forward to. Been doing the night hikes at Devil's Den State Park every other Saturday for about 4 years now. Same trails, same talking points about the sandstone formations and the CCC history. Same bats if we're lucky. I've walked the Butterfield Nature Trail probably 300 times, maybe more. Last month on April 12th, I had a group of 8 for the 9 p.m. hike, which is pretty standard for spring. Nice mix of a retired couple from Fayetteville, 3 college students from U of A, a woman named Sharon who I'd seen on hikes before, and then 2 guys who I think were brothers but never actually confirmed that. Weather was perfect, around 58 degrees, clear sky, almost full moon, so we didn't even need the flashlights much for the first half of the trail. Everything was completely routine until we got to the part of the trail where it curves past that big sandstone outcropping near the old CCC shelter ruins. I was in the middle of my usual thing about how the Civilian Conservation Corps built most of the park infrastructure in the 1930s, when one of the college kids, a guy wearing a Razorbacks hoodie, interrupted me. "Hey, do you see that face?" I stopped talking. "What face?" He pointed at the rock formation to our left, the big one that's maybe 12 feet tall with all the weathering patterns and lichen. Right there in the stone. It's looking right at us. The other 2 students moved closer with their phone lights. One of them, a girl with her hair in a braid, said, "Oh my God, I see it too." Sharon walked up beside me and pointed. The eyes are those 2 divots, and the mouth is that horizontal crack below. How have I never noticed that before? I looked at where they were all pointing, and I'll be honest, my first thought was that they were messing with me or doing some kind of inside joke thing. I've walked past that rock literally hundreds of times and never saw anything that looked like a face. But then the retired guy, I think his name was Dennis, said, "Well, I'll be damned, that's clear as day." And that's when I saw it. I don't know how to explain this part properly. It wasn't like one of those optical illusions where you stare at something and suddenly it clicks. It was more like the face had always been there and my brain just suddenly decided to acknowledge it. 2 oval depressions for eyes, a longer shadow below them that could be a nose, and that crack forming a mouth that looked like it was slightly open. Not even slightly. It was slightly open. The proportions were wrong for a human face. The eyes were too far apart and too high up. But it was absolutely, unmistakably a face. "Huh," I said, because I didn't know what else to say. "Yeah, I guess it does look like a face." "You guess?" The girl with the braid laughed. "That's like the most obvious face I've ever seen in a rock." We stood there for probably 2 or 3 minutes with everyone taking photos. I took a few myself on my phone, a Samsung Galaxy that I've had for like 2 years, and the camera's pretty good usually. Got several clear shots of the rock face with the moon overhead, giving decent lighting. Then we moved on and finished the hike without anything else weird happening. When I got home around 11:30 p.m., I uploaded the photos to my laptop because I was genuinely curious about this face I'd somehow never noticed. I wanted to see if it was really as obvious in the photos as it had been in person. I opened the first photo. Clear shot of the sandstone outcropping. Good detail on the lichen patterns and the weathering. No face. I mean, the divots were there. The crack was there. But they didn't look like anything. Just rock being rock. Tried the second photo, same angle, but zoomed in a bit. Nothing. Third photo taken from slightly to the left. Just a rock formation. I figured it was a lighting thing, or maybe the angle had to be exactly right. You know how sometimes you can see shapes in clouds, but they don't photograph well. Made sense. Went to bed around 12:30 a.m., and that's when it got strange. I was lying there waiting to fall asleep, and I started seeing the face in the ceiling texture. My bedroom ceiling has that popcorn texture stuff that I've been meaning to scrape off for like 3 years. And in the dim light from my alarm clock, I could see the same face. Same proportions. Eyes too far apart, too high up, mouth slightly open. I turned on my side to face the wall, saw it in the wood grain of my bed frame. Okay, I thought, this is just that thing where once you notice a pattern, you start seeing it everywhere. Pareidolia or whatever. Like when you learn a new word and suddenly you hear it constantly. I do IT work, so I know how pattern recognition works. Our brains are basically just trying to find familiar shapes in random data. Faces especially, because that's evolutionary survival stuff. I eventually fell asleep, but it took a while. Sunday, I mostly forgot about it. Did some remote troubleshooting work for a client in Springdale. Went grocery shopping at the Walmart in Fayetteville. Normal weekend stuff. My girlfriend Emma, well, ex-girlfriend as of 6 weeks ago, which is still kind of a sore spot, texted me about picking up some books she'd left at my place, but I didn't respond because I wasn't ready to deal with that yet. Monday morning, I was making coffee and saw the face in the wood grain of my kitchen cabinet. Same exact proportions. When I actually stopped mid-pour and just stared at it for probably 30 seconds. The eyes were these 2 knots in the wood, darker circles with the grain swirling around them. The mouth was a horizontal streak where the stain had settled unevenly. It looked exactly like the face in the rock. I closed my eyes and rubbed them. Looked again. Still there. Okay, I thought. You're just primed to see this pattern now. It'll fade. Our brains do this. It did not fade. By Monday evening, I was seeing it everywhere. In the tile pattern of my bathroom floor. In the arrangement of icons on my computer desktop. In the negative space between the branches of the oak tree in my front yard. Always the same face. Always the same wrong proportions. I tried to take photos of some of these to see if I was going crazy. Took a picture of the wood cabinet. He looked at the photo. Just wood grain, no face. Took a picture of the bathroom tile. Just a tile pattern. Tuesday, I had a follow-up hike scheduled. Different trail at Devil's Den. The 4 p.m. Yellow Rock Overlook walk, which is easier and usually gets families. I led the hike and everything went fine, except I kept seeing the face in every rock formation we passed. The sandstone along the trail, the bluffs in the distance, even in the gravel under our feet when the stones happened to be arranged a certain way. None of the hikers mentioned seeing anything. Wednesday, I was doing a video call for work, helping a client with their server backup configuration, and I realized I was seeing the face in the arrangement of windows on the guy's screen. The 2 dialog boxes were the eyes. The taskbar was the mouth. I had to end the call early and tell him I'd follow up via email. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the face. Not like a mental image. It was more like it was burned into my retinas or something. The same proportions hovering in the darkness. Eyes too far apart. Mouth slightly open. Thursday morning, I called my regular doctor to make an appointment, but they couldn't get me in until the following week. I asked if it could be a vision problem, and the receptionist suggested I try an optometrist instead. I found one in Fayetteville, a place called Ozark Vision Center, and they had a cancellation slot for Friday afternoon, so I took it. Friday, I drove up to Fayetteville and met with Dr. Patel. Nice guy, maybe early 50s, very thorough. And I explained that I was seeing patterns everywhere and was worried something was wrong with my eyes. I didn't mention the face specifically because I didn't want to sound unhinged. He did the full exam. Checked my prescription, barely changed from 2 years ago. Did the glaucoma test, looked at my retinas with that bright light thing. checked my field of vision. Everything came back completely normal. "Your eyes are fine," he said. "Better than fine, actually. 20/20 vision, no signs of any issues." I felt relieved and frustrated at the same time. So why am I seeing patterns that aren't there? "Well, pattern recognition is a brain function, not an eye function," he said. "If you're concerned about that, you might want to talk to your primary care physician about a neuroconsult. But honestly, it's probably just stress or fatigue. But our brains do funny things when we're not sleeping well." I nodded and thanked him. As I was getting ready to leave, I glanced at the framed diplomas and certificates on his wall. University of Missouri, American Board of Optometry, bunch of other credentials. The face was in the university seal on his diploma from Mizzou. I stopped and stared. The seal had these design elements, some kind of historical imagery, and in the negative space between the elements I could see the face. Same proportions, same eyes, same mouth. "Something wrong?" Dr. Patel asked. "No, sorry, just spacing out." I left quickly and sat in my car in the parking lot for like 10 minutes. Then I pulled out my phone and Googled the University of Missouri seal. Looked at it on the official university website. It looked nothing like what I'd seen on the diploma. The elements were different. The negative space didn't form anything resembling a face. But I'd seen it. I knew I'd seen it. Saturday, I didn't have a hike scheduled, so I spent most of the day trying to research what was happening to me. I searched for pareidolia, pattern recognition disorders, visual hallucinations, anything that might explain why I was seeing the same face everywhere. I found a lot of information about pareidolia. It's totally normal. Everyone experiences it. It's why we see faces in clouds and the Virgin Mary in toast. But everything I read said that pareidolia is random. You see different faces in different things. You don't see the exact same face with the exact same proportions in everything you look at. I also found some stuff about a condition called prosopometamorphopsia, where people see faces as distorted, but that's about seeing real faces wrong, not seeing faces where there aren't any. Nothing I found matched what I was experiencing. Sunday morning, I did something I probably shouldn't have done. I drove back to Devil's Den and hiked the Butterfield Trail by myself. It was early, around 7 a.m. Hardly anyone else in the park yet. Cool morning, maybe 52 degrees, heavy dew on everything. I went straight to the sandstone outcropping where it had started. The face was there, obvious and unmistakable. The two oval depressions for eyes, the shadow nose, the crack mouth, looking right at me. I stood there staring at it for, I don't know how long, 15 minutes maybe. I took more photos with my phone. I pulled up the photos immediately to check them. No face in the photos, just rock. I walked closer to the formation and reached out to touch one of the eye divots. The stone was cold and rough under my fingers. Sandstone, weathered by decades of rain and wind, covered in patches of lichen. Nothing unusual about it at all. But I could see the face. I stepped back and looked at it from different angles. The face was visible from every angle, not equally clear. It was most obvious from the spot on the trail where the college kid had first pointed it out. But I could see it from the left, from the right, from up close, from farther away. I sat down on a nearby rock and tried to think logically about this. Either something was wrong with my brain, or something was actually happening that I didn't understand. The fact that other people had seen the face, too, at least 8 other people on the hike, suggested it wasn't just me going crazy. But the fact that it didn't show up in photos, and the fact that I now saw it everywhere, suggested that maybe something had changed in how my brain was processing visual information. I pulled out my phone and started searching for information about that specific rock formation. Devil's Den sandstone face and variations of that. Didn't find anything relevant. Tried Devil's Den pareidolia and got some random articles about faces in nature, but nothing specific to this park. Then I tried searching the Devil's Den State Park forums and Facebook groups. There's a fairly active community of people who hike there regularly and share photos and trail conditions and stuff. Took me a while, scrolling through posts about trail closures and wildlife sightings, and someone complaining about the bathroom facilities, but eventually I found something. A post from June 2019, almost 5 years ago, in a Devil's Den hiking forum that's not very active anymore. The username was something like trailguide_Mike, or maybe Trail Guide Mike, I forget exactly. The post said, "Has anyone else noticed the face in the rock formation on Butterfield Trail near the old CCC shelter? I've been guiding hikes here for 2 years and never saw it until last week when a visitor pointed it out. Now I can't stop seeing it. It's in every photo I take, every trail marker, and that was it." The post just ended mid-sentence. I checked the user's profile. Trailguide_Mike had joined the forum in 2017. Who made probably 40 or 50 posts about trail conditions and park events, and then that final post in June 2019. Never posted again. Account still exists, but no activity after that incomplete sentence. I sat there on the rocks staring at my phone screen for a long time. Then I scrolled through the replies to the post. There were only 3. First reply from someone called Ozark Hiker, 7-3. "What are you talking about? I hike that trail all the time and there's no face." Second reply from the forum moderator, "Hey Mike, you okay? This post seems cut off." Third reply from someone named Sharon K_AR. "I was on Mike's hike last Saturday and I saw the face too. It's definitely there. Really obvious, actually. But I looked at my photos from the hike and can't find it in any of them, which is weird." The third reply stopped me cold. Sharon. Well, I'd had a hiker named Sharon on my April 12th hike, the woman who'd seen the face. I clicked on Sharon K_AR's profile. Last activity was June 2019, same month as that post. She'd been an active forum member before that, posting regularly about hikes in the area. And then nothing. I tried searching for Trailguide_Mike outside the forum. Couldn't find anything. No social media profiles that seemed to match. No other online presence. Same with Sharon K_AR. I sat there in the early morning quiet of the park with the face in the rock staring at me and tried to decide what to do with this information. I could report it to someone, but report what? That I found an old forum post that cut off mid-sentence? That 2 people stopped posting in an obscure hiking forum 5 years ago? That I was seeing a face everywhere I looked? When I could try to find Mike or Sharon in person. But I had no last names, no real identifying information except that Mike had apparently been a trail guide here around 2017 to 2019. And I'd never heard of him. I could ask the park office if they had records of previous guides, but that felt like a weird thing to request, and I wasn't sure what I'd even say. I could stop leading hikes at Devil's Den, just quit and never come back to this trail. But the thing is, I was already seeing the face everywhere. At home, at the store, in video calls, in the ceiling of my bedroom. Leaving the park wouldn't stop that. I needed to understand what the face was, or what it meant, or why some people could see it and others couldn't. I stood up and walked closer to the rock formation again. Studied it carefully. The eyes were natural depressions in the sandstone, probably formed by water erosion over centuries. The mouth was a horizontal crack, also natural, also the result of weathering and maybe some minor seismic shifting over the years. Nothing about the formation itself was unusual or artificial. But the face was there, undeniable. "What are you?" I said out loud, which felt stupid as soon as I did it. The rock didn't answer, obviously. I took one more photo, checked it. No face in the photo. Then I did something else. I opened the voice recorder app on my phone and described what I was seeing in as much detail as possible. The proportions, the spacing, the expression. I described the location on the trail and the exact angle where it was most visible. Then I opened the Notes app and tried to draw the face using my finger on the screen. I'm not artistic at all, so it looked pretty crude. But I did my best to capture the proportions. Eyes too far apart, too high up, slightly open mouth. I saved the drawing and the voice recording. Then I hiked back to my car and drove home. Over the next week, I tried to go about my normal life while seeing the face everywhere. And I mean everywhere. In the pattern of cracks in the sidewalk. In the arrangement of books on my shelf. In the pixelation of a low-res image on a website. In the foam of my coffee. In the clouds. In the carpeting. In the shower tiles. Always the same proportions. I started keeping a count on my phone of how many times per day I saw it. Monday was 47 times. Tuesday was 63. Wednesday. I stopped counting because it was constant, and the number didn't mean anything. My sleep got worse. I was down to maybe 3 or 4 hours a night, and even then I was seeing the face in my dreams. Or not dreams exactly. More like it was projected onto the inside of my eyelids. I canceled my next scheduled hike at Devil's Den. Told the park coordinator I was dealing with some personal stuff and needed a few weeks off. She was understanding. I stopped taking photos of anything because there was no point. The face never showed up in images, only in person. On April 28th, 16 days after the hike where I first saw the face, I did another deep dive into the forums and Facebook groups trying to find more information about Mike or Sharon. I found a post in a different Facebook group, one for Arkansas hiking guides and naturalists, from July 2019. Someone asking if anyone knew how to contact a guide named Mike, who used to work at Devil's Den because he'd stopped responding to messages. A few people replied saying they didn't know him or hadn't seen him in a while. One person, someone named Julia Cheen, who listed herself as a ranger at Devil's Den, replied, "Mike resigned suddenly in June 2019 for personal reasons. We weren't given a forwarding contact." I sent Julia Cheen a private message asking if she remembered anything else about Mike's resignation or if she had any way to contact him. She responded a few hours later saying she'd only been with the Park Service for a few months when he resigned and didn't know him well. But she remembered it being abrupt and unexpected. Dead end. I tried searching for Sharon using the username SharonK_AR, but couldn't find anything outside that one forum. On May 2nd, I went back to Devil's Den again. Alone, mid-morning on a Thursday when the park was nearly empty. I hiked directly to the rock formation. The face was there, exactly as I'd been seeing it everywhere else for the past 3 weeks. I stood in front of it and said, "I need to understand what you are." No response, obviously. But then something occurred to me. I pulled up the voice recording I'd made 3 weeks earlier, the one where I described the face in detail, and I played it back. My voice from the recording described the eyes, the nose shadow, the mouth. Described the proportions exactly as I remembered them. But as I stood there looking at the rock and listening to my own description, I realized something was wrong. I couldn't actually remember what the face looked like anymore. I mean, I could see it right in front of me. I was looking directly at it. But when I tried to visualize it in my mind, tried to picture it without looking at it, I couldn't. The memory wouldn't form. I looked away from the rock, looked at the trees beside the trail, and tried to remember the face I'd just been staring at. Nothing. Blank. I looked back at the rock. There it was, unmistakable. Looked away. Couldn't remember it. I played the voice recording again and listened to myself describe the proportions and features, but the words didn't connect to any mental image. It was like listening to someone describe a person I'd never met. I opened the Notes app and looked at the crude drawing I'd made. It didn't look like anything, just some rough circles and a line. But when I looked at the rock, I could see the face clearly. I stood there testing this over and over, looking at the rock, seeing the face, looking away, unable to remember or visualize it, looking back, seeing it again immediately. I don't know how long I stayed there doing this, maybe an hour. Eventually, I hiked back to my car and drove home. That was 12 days ago. Since then, I've been back to that rock formation 6 more times. I can't really explain why. I'm not leading hikes anymore. I told the park coordinator I needed to take an extended break, and she said she'd find someone else to cover my shifts. I just keep going back to the rock, every time I see the face. Every time I try to remember it when I'm not looking at it, and I can't. The weird thing is, and I don't see the face in other places anymore. It stopped appearing in my ceiling texture, my wood cabinets, the tile patterns. Stopped showing up in clouds and carpeting and coffee foam. Now I only see it in the rock. And I can't remember what I'm looking for. I know I'm looking for a face. I have the voice recording and the drawing to remind me. But I don't know what the face looks like until I'm standing in front of that rock formation again. I drove to Devil's Den again this morning, May 14th. Hiked to the rock before sunrise. Stood there in the dim pre-dawn light and watched the face become visible as the sun came up and the shadows shifted. I tried to take a photo even though I knew it wouldn't show up. It didn't. I thought about that forum post from trailguide_Mike, ending mid-sentence. It's in every photo I take, every trail marker, every what? I thought about Sharon from the forum who saw the face on Mike's hike and then never posted again. I thought about the Sharon who'd been on my hike, who I hadn't seen since. I sat down on the trail in front of the rock formation, and I'm typing this on my phone right now, sitting here looking at it. The face is there. I know it's there. I can see it. But I don't know what it looks like. And as soon as I leave this spot, I won't remember. I'll just know that I need to come back and look again. I think I'm going to stay here a little while longer, just to make sure I've really seen it. Just to try one more time to remember. I've been doing property inspections for Regions Bank since 2009, mostly foreclosures and estate properties across central Alabama. It's not glamorous, but it pays better than my old job at the county assessor's office, and I can set my own schedule, which matters since my mom moved in with me last year after her hip surgery. Most houses are just sad, leftover furniture, overgrown yards, sometimes a cat's that got left behind. You document everything, check for damage or squatters, update the file, and move on. There's one property outside Centerville I've been inspecting monthly since August 2018. The file says the owners just walked away during some kind of family dispute over the estate. No one's been inside except me as far as the bank knows. It's about 15 minutes past the Dollar General on County Road 46. I'm sitting by itself on 4 acres of pine and kudzu. The nearest neighbor is over a mile south. When I say empty, I mean empty. No power, no water service. Mail stopped years ago. The house itself is a plain 1970s ranch, vinyl siding that used to be yellow, carport on the side. 3-bed, 2-bath, maybe 1,400 square feet. The kind of place that was probably someone's retirement dream and just got left behind when things fell apart financially or someone passed. Happens all the time out here. First weird thing I noticed was in November 2018, my third inspection. I always check the thermostat as part of the HVAC documentation, even when the power's off, just to note the setting for the report. In August, it had been set to 78. In September, 78. But in November, it was set to 96. I figured maybe someone had been inside, or maybe a realtor showing it. But there was no lockbox activity in the system, and I had the only key. I made a note and moved on. December, 95 degrees. January 2019, 97. February, 96 again. I mentioned it to my supervisor in March during our quarterly check-in call, and she said maybe the dial was slipping or settling, which didn't really make sense, but I didn't push it. These old mechanical thermostats sometimes get bumped, or the spring inside wears out. But every single month it was different. I started taking photos of it with my phone, just for my own records. April, 98.2. May, 97.8. June, 99.1. I'm not an engineer, but I am detail-oriented. It's literally my job. So I started keeping a spreadsheet. I know how that sounds. But after a year of monthly inspections and monthly changes to a thermostat in a house with no power and no people, you start paying attention. July 2019, 96.5 August, 95.3. I didn't recognize a pattern yet, but the numbers were too specific to be random. And they were always in the 90s, always between 95 and 99. I tried testing the dial myself in September. I moved it down to 72 before I left. When I came back in October, it was at 97.6. That's when I started feeling uncomfortable going inside. Not scared exactly, just, I don't know. I started scheduling that property first thing in the morning so I wouldn't have to think about it the rest of the day. I'd unlock the door, do my walkthrough fast, take my photos, check the thermostat, and leave. The house always smelled stale. Like old carpet and that specific dust smell you get in places that nobody's living in. But sometimes I swear it smelled warm, if that makes sense. Like someone had just been cooking or running a blow dryer. March 2020 was when everything shut down for COVID. The bank suspended physical inspections for 2 months, and I was honestly relieved. But when I went back in June, the thermostat was set to 98.1. It had changed at least twice while I wasn't even going inside. I didn't tell my supervisor that part. I just kept documenting. My daughter Sarah, who's 28 and works in IT in Birmingham, came to visit in July, and I mentioned it to her over dinner. She suggested a camera. She actually ordered one for me off Amazon that night, some $45 Wise Cam thing that connects to Wi-Fi via hotspot. She helped me set it up on my phone, and I mounted it in the hallway across from the thermostat during my August inspection. I couldn't get Wi-Fi service inside the house normally, but Sarah showed me how to use my phone as a hotspot temporarily. Let the camera upload footage to the cloud, then turn it off to save data. It wasn't live monitoring, just motion-activated clips that would save whenever something moved in frame. For 3 weeks, nothing. No clips at all. Then on August 23rd, at 3:17 a.m., I got a motion alert on my phone. I was in bed and almost ignored it, figured it was a bug or a lighting glitch. But I opened the app. The footage showed the hallway, dark except for a little bit of moonlight from the bedroom window reflecting off the wall. And the thermostat dial turned. It just rotated slowly from where I'd left it at 74. I'd started leaving it at random settings to test, up to just past 97. No hand, no person. Just the dial moving by itself for about 4 seconds, then stopping. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I went back the next day, which wasn't my scheduled inspection, but I had to see it in person. Thermostat was set to 97.4. The camera was still mounted, undisturbed. I checked the footage archive. That single 11-second clip was the only motion event recorded all month. I don't believe in ghosts. I really don't. I grew up Baptist. I believe in heaven and I believe in spiritual warfare in an abstract sense, but not like haunted thermostats. So I tried to think practical. Maybe there was a draft causing pressure changes that moved the dial. Maybe there was some kind of spring mechanism inside that was unwinding over time. I unscrewed the thermostat from the wall and looked inside. It was a Honeywell model from probably 1983. Just a coil and a dial and a mercury switch. Nothing motorized. Nothing that should move on its own. I put it back and left. September inspection, 96.8 degrees. No new camera footage. October, 95.7. No footage. I started feeling tired every time I went inside that house. Like, deeply tired. The kind of exhaustion where you want to sit down right there on the floor and close your eyes. It hit me worst in the hallway near the thermostat in the back bedroom. I'd be fine walking up to the front door, fine in the living room. Then the minute I stepped into that hallway, it was like someone draped a weighted blanket over my brain. I mentioned it to my doctor during my annual physical in November. She asked if I was sleeping okay, if I was stressed about my mom's health stuff, if I was drinking enough water. She ran blood work. Everything normal. She suggested perimenopause, maybe seasonal affective disorder. I didn't mention the house specifically because I didn't want to sound insane. But I started wearing my Apple Watch during inspections to track what was happening. I'd check my heart rate and oxygen levels when I felt that wave of exhaustion hit. December inspection. I was inside the house for 22 minutes total. When I got back to my car and checked the watch app, it had logged a 19-minute nap. Deep sleep. REM cycles. I hadn't fallen asleep. I'd been walking around documenting wall cracks and checking window seals. But according to my watch, my heart rate had dropped to 58 beats per minute, and my movement data flattened out like I'd been lying still. I sat in the driveway for 10 minutes just staring at the data. I felt fine. Well, tired, but fine. No lost time that I was aware of. But the watch doesn't lie. It's just tracking biometrics. That's when I started researching. I spent 2 days going down internet rabbit holes about CO poisoning, EMF sensitivity, infrasound, black mold, mass hysteria, all of it. The symptom that kept jumping out at me was carbon monoxide. Drowsiness, confusion, time distortion, feeling like you're dreaming while awake. The house was all electric as far as I knew. No gas service, but there was an old furnace in the basement from before they converted to a heat pump system, probably disconnected in the early 2000s. It had been red tagged as decommissioned in the inspection notes from 2018. I ordered a carbon monoxide detector on Amazon, the kind that gives you a digital readout, not just an alarm. January 2021 inspection. I walked in with the detector in my hand. It read 0 in the driveway, 0 in the living room. But when I stepped into the hallway, it spiked to 31 parts per million. By the time I got to the back bedroom, it was reading 48. OSHA says anything above 50 is immediately dangerous. Anything above 35 for extended periods causes cognitive impairment. I'd been spending 20 minutes a month in that hallway for over 2 years. I left immediately and called my supervisor. She escalated it to the bank's property management team, who sent a contractor out within 3 days. Guy's name was Tim. I work for a company out of Tuscaloosa that does HVAC and remediation. He called me after he finished the assessment. The old furnace in the basement had never been fully disconnected from the gas line. The shut-off valve was closed, but the line had a slow leak at a joint behind the unit, and the furnace cabinet had rusted through in 2 places. Gas was seeping into the basement and drifting upstairs through gaps around the ductwork. The house had been sitting there leaking methane and CO for years, maybe since before the foreclosure. He said it was a miracle the place hadn't exploded. The contractor capped the line, removed the furnace completely, and aired the place out. The bank added it to the remediation file and adjusted the property listing disclosures. I went back in March for my next inspection. The air smelled different, cleaner, but also colder somehow. The tired feeling was gone. I walked the whole house, including the hallway and back bedroom, and felt totally normal. My CO detector read 0. I checked the thermostat. It was set to 74, exactly where I'd left it in January. I figured that was the end of it. Weird, explainable, dangerous, but over. I even felt a little stupid for not checking for CO earlier. Then I reviewed the camera footage. I hadn't checked the Wise app in weeks because I'd been focused on the gas leak situation. But there were 3 motion events saved from February before the contractor came out. February 4th, 3:18 a.m. Thermostat dial turns to 96.1. February 11th, 3:13 a.m. Dial turns to 97.3. February 18th, 3:20 a.m. Dial turns to 95.8. All while I wasn't inside. All while the house was still leaking gas. But there was something else. Sarah had showed me a feature on the app back when we set it up. Thermal overlay. The camera doesn't have real thermal imaging, but it has a post-processing filter that highlights heat signatures in the frame based on motion and light analysis. I'd never used it. I turned it on for the February 18th clip. The hallway was dark. The thermostat dial turned just like before. But in the thermal overlay, there was a shape in the frame. A vertical bloom of heat, about 5.5 feet tall, standing directly in front of the thermostat. It didn't move. It was just there, a person-shaped column of warmth, present for the entire 4 seconds the dial was turning. Then the clip ended. I went back and applied the filter to the August 2020 clip, or the first one I'd ever captured. Same thing. A heat signature, human-sized, standing exactly where you'd stand if you were reaching out to adjust the dial. But there was nothing on the visual feed. No body, no shadow. Just the dial turning and a ghost of warmth that the camera's sensor had picked up. I called Sarah and made her walk me through it again to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding the feature. She explained that the thermal overlay isn't accurate. It's mostly cosmetic, just highlighting relative warmth in the image based on pixel data. It's not actual infrared. But she got quiet when I sent her the clips. "Mom," she said, "there shouldn't be any heat signature if there's no object. I haven't told the bank. I don't know what I'd even say. The CO is gone, the furnace is gone, the house is safe now. And I went back for April and May inspections and everything was fine. Thermostat stayed where I left it. No camera alerts, no exhaustion. But I kept thinking about those numbers. All those months of temperatures in the high 90s. So I looked it up. Normal human body temperature, 97 to 99 degrees. Body temperature during deep sleep drops to around 95 to 96. Body temperature during REM sleep rises slightly, around 97 to 98. Body temperature during fever or stress, 99 to 100. I made a chart matching every thermostat setting I'd photographed from November 2018 through January 2021. 27 months of data. The settings cycled through a pattern, starting around 96, rising to 98 or 99, dropping back to 95, then climbing again, like a sleep cycle. REM, deep sleep, light sleep, REM, over and over. I'm not a doctor, but I spent 4 hours reading research papers on sleep physiology and thermoregulation. The pattern matched. It matched exactly. Someone, or something, was setting that thermostat to the temperature of a sleeping person. Every month. For years. The contractor called me in late May. He'd been going through the remediation paperwork and wanted to clarify something for his records. He asked if I knew how long the furnace had been leaking. I said at least since 2018, probably longer. He said that didn't make sense. The rust on the cabinet and the corrosion on the gas line fitting suggested the leak had been active for a long time, maybe 10 or 15 years. But the gas company's records showed the service was turned off to that property in September 2012, when the previous owner passed away. There shouldn't have been any gas in that line at all, he said. But something made that valve open. Partially, like someone turned it back on just a little. I didn't ask any follow-up questions. I just thanked him and hung up. June 2021 was my last inspection of that property. The bank finally accepted an offer from a cash buyer, some LLC out of Montgomery that flips rural land. I uploaded my final report, submitted my photos, and closed the file. The thermostat in the last photo is set to 74 degrees, right where I'd left it. But the camera captured one more clip before I uninstalled it. June 9th, 2021, 3:09 a.m. No dial movement, no heat signature, just the hallway, empty and still. Except the thermostat readout, the little numbers visible on the dial face in the moonlight, read 93.2 degrees. I looked that number up too. Average body temperature 4 hours after death, 93 to 94 degrees, depending on ambient conditions. I didn't go back inside. I left the camera on the kitchen counter, locked the door, and dropped the key in the bank's after-hours drop box that afternoon. I still do property inspections. I've got 6 foreclosures on my current rotation, all within 40 minutes of home. I don't take contracts in Bibb County anymore. My supervisor didn't ask why, and I didn't explain. My mom's doing a lot better now. She's walking without the cane most days. Sarah's talking about moving back home from Birmingham next year, which would be nice. I sleep fine, for the most part. But I did check one more thing, just out of curiosity. The previous owner of that house, the one who passed in 2012, was a man named Leonard Odom, 68 years old. According to his obituary in the Centerville Press, he died at home in his sleep after a long illness. No surviving family. Service held at Pine Grove Baptist. Cause of death wasn't listed, but the coroner's report, which is public record in Alabama, said acute carbon monoxide poisoning due to faulty heating equipment. He was found 4 days after he died, in the back bedroom. In August, I've been doing rural delivery for FedEx Ground for almost 6 years now, and I thought I'd seen every kind of weird you can get in this job. Wrong addresses, people who don't exist, packages to abandoned farms. But what's been happening with my Alson route doesn't fit into any category I know how to file under. My name's Megan, I'm 34, and I cover the northern chunk of Cavalier County in North Dakota, 5 days a week. It's mostly farmland, a few tiny towns, lots of gravel roads that turn into soup when it rains. Alson is technically on my route, but it's barely a town. I looked it up once out of curiosity, and the 2020 census listed it at like 26 people. There's a grain elevator, a church that I think is still standing, and maybe a dozen houses total if you count the ones that look abandoned. Here's the thing, though. And I deliver to Alson 4 times a week minimum, sometimes 5. And every single time I've got between 40 and 55 packages going there, for a town of 26 people. At first, I didn't think much of it. People order stuff online, especially in rural areas where the nearest Walmart is 45 minutes away. Maybe there's a bunch of older folks who get medications delivered or something. But then I started noticing the names. Every single package goes to a different name, not different people at the same address, different names at different addresses. The manifest usually reads like Marion Castellano, 104 Birch Street, Amelia Contranos, 89 Birch Street, Lorna, Macon Liest, 202 Fifth Avenue, North Miriam Constable, 58 County Road, 7, and on and on. I've never delivered to the same name twice in 3 years. The first time I really started feeling like something was off was back in late September last year. I had 48 packages for Alson that day, which was already a lot, and I was running behind because my usual route got rearranged when another driver called in sick. I was annoyed, tired, and I just wanted to get through it. I pulled into the first address on my scanner, 319 Birch Street, package for a Teresa Monclay Loans, and did the usual. Pulled up, scanned the package, took the delivery confirmation photo of it sitting on the porch, drove off. Next address, 72 County Road 9, package for Salomon Monosiltar. I remember thinking the roads in Alson were laid out weird, because I swear I took 3 right turns and ended up on a street that looked exactly like the last one. Same kind of porch, same faded blue paint on the house. When I figured maybe they were related or someone bought the house next door as an investment or something. Third stop, 453rd Avenue, package for Lionel Marcano Ost. Same porch again, not similar, the same. Same wooden slats with the one cracked board on the left side. Same metal lawn chair with the torn webbing. Same decorative wreath on the door that had fake sunflowers and a bunch of plastic berries. I stood there for a second staring at it, then looked back at my scanner. Different address. I looked at the package label. Different name, different address. I took the photo, scanned it, and sat in the truck for a minute trying to figure out if I'd just driven in a circle somehow. But I hadn't. My GPS showed 3 different points on the map. I kept going. By the time I finished all 48 stops, and I was pretty sure I'd been to the same house every single time. But that didn't make any sense because my scanner confirmed every separate address. The GPS logged every separate location. I even pulled over at the end of the route and looked through the delivery photos I'd taken. Every single porch was different. Different colors, different furniture, different doors, different house numbers visible in the frame. I clearly remembered taking all of them, but I also clearly remembered seeing the same porch with the sunflower wreath 48 times in a row. I didn't say anything to anyone at the depot that night. I figured I was just burnt out. It had been a long week, and I'd been arguing with my landlord about whether or not the leak in my bathroom was my responsibility to fix, which was stressing me out more than it should have. But it kept happening. Every time I had a route through Alson, I'd pull up to what felt like the same house over and over again. And every time I checked my photos afterward, they showed totally different houses. I started taking extra pictures on my phone. Not just the scanner photos. Same thing. My phone showed different porches, different addresses, all clearly distinct. I tried changing up my route order once. I manually sorted the packages and delivered them in reverse order compared to what the scanner suggested. Didn't matter. Same house every time in my memory. Different houses in every photo. The only consistent thing was the person I occasionally saw. An elderly woman, maybe late 70s, white hair pulled back in a bun, floral print dresses. She never came out to meet me, but I'd see her sometimes through a window or standing just inside the door when I rang the bell. She never waved, never smiled, just watched me. And I swear I saw her at multiple stops on the same day. I started wondering in early November if I was losing it, like genuinely losing my mind. I went to my doctor and told her I was having memory problems. Didn't mention the specifics, just said I was forgetting parts of my day. She ran some blood work, said everything looked fine, suggested I might be stressed and should try getting more sleep. I tried. Didn't help. I started logging things manually. I bought a little notebook, and every time I delivered to Alson, I'd write down the address, the name, the time, and a description of what I saw. Then I'd compare it to my photos at the end of the day. Well, it was always different. My notes would say, same blue porch, sunflower wreath, metal lawn chair. My photos would show red brick house, no porch furniture, decorative flag with a cardinal on it. I thought maybe my dash cam would clear it up. I've got one that runs continuously while I'm driving, and it timestamps everything. I went back through the footage from a route I ran on November the 14th. I watched myself pull into the same driveway 12 times in a row. Same cracked asphalt driveway. Same mailbox with the number 104 painted on it in chipped white paint. Same angle. Same positioning. Same everything. But when I cross-referenced with my scanner GPS log, it showed 12 completely separate locations spread across a 2-mile radius. I tried showing the footage to my supervisor at the depot, a guy named Ken who's worked there for like 20 years. He looked at it, shrugged, and said the timestamps were wrong and the camera probably looped the recording by mistake. He didn't seem concerned. I asked if anyone else had ever mentioned anything weird about the Alson route, and he just said, Alson's always been a little odd, but the packages get delivered, so I don't really care. That pissed me off more than it should have, but I dropped it. It was my co-worker Travis who finally made me realize this wasn't just in my head. Travis is early 40s, been doing delivery for a couple years. Generally pretty no-nonsense. We were talking in the break room back in early January, and I mentioned offhandedly that the Alson route was annoying because of how many stops it had for such a tiny town. And he said he'd never run Alson himself, and he was curious what it was like. So I told him he could ride along next time. I had a heavy day there. January 9th. I had 52 packages for Alson. Travis brought his phone and took pictures at every stop. He was making jokes at first about how all small towns look the same. But by the 10th stop, he went quiet. I asked him if he noticed anything weird, and he said, no. Why? I didn't want to lead him, so I just said I was curious what he thought. We finished all 52 stops, and I drove us back to the depot. On the way, I asked him what he thought of the route, and he said it was fine. Just a lot of houses spread out. Said the people in Alson must really like ordering stuff online. When we got back, I asked if I could see his photos. He had 52 pictures on his phone, and every single one showed a different house. Different porches, different colors, different yard setups. I asked him if he remembered anything unusual, and he said no, just a standard route. Then I showed him my dashcam footage. He watched the whole thing in silence. 52 stops. 52 times my truck pulled into the exact same driveway with the exact same mailbox. He got really pale and said, "That's not right." I said, "What do you remember?" He said, "I remember going to like 50 different houses. I took pictures of all of them." I pointed at his phone. "You did take pictures. They're right there. But look at the dash cam." He watched it again. Then he checked the timestamps on his own photos and cross-referenced them with the dash cam footage. They matched. Same times. But his photos showed different houses, and my dashcam showed the same driveway over and over. He left the break room, and I didn't see him for the rest of the shift. The next day, he called in sick, and when he came back 2 days later, he didn't want to talk about it. I tried bringing it up once, and he just said, "I don't know what happened with the camera, but I'm not riding along to Alson again." That's when I started pulling records. FedEx keeps delivery logs going back years. I had to ask someone in the IT department to pull them for me as a personal route analysis project, which probably sounded insane, but the guy didn't ask questions. He sent me a spreadsheet with every package I delivered to Alson for the last 3 years. It was over 6,000 packages, every single one to a different name. And I started going through the names one by one, and I noticed something after about 20 minutes of staring at them. They all had the same letters, not similar letters, the exact same set. I picked one at random, Marion Castellano. Then I picked another, Amelia Contranos. I opened an anagram solver online and plugged them both in. They were anagrams of each other. I checked another name, Lorna Macon Liast. Same letters, same exact set rearranged. I went through 50 names. Every single one was an anagram of the same full set of letters, AMELIACONTRANOS/MARIONCASTLEANAMACONLIEST. 15 letters rearranged into different combinations with hyphens, and spacing changed to make them look like different names. I went cold all over. I checked the earliest records I could pull. 2015. Same thing. Different anagram combinations, but always resolving to the same base set of letters. I tried looking up the actual town records for Alson. North Dakota has some public databases for property ownership, and I figured maybe I could cross-reference the addresses with real residents. 104 Birch Street, the address I delivered to at least 300 times according to my logs, didn't exist in the county property records. Neither did any of the other addresses. I checked the USPS database. None of the Alson addresses I'd been delivering to were listed as valid mailing addresses. I drove out there on my day off. It was January 14th, a Saturday, around noon. I took my notebook with a list of 20 addresses I delivered to that week, and I drove to each one using my GPS. Every single one took me to the same location. A small house at the end of a gravel road about a quarter-mile outside what I guess you'd call downtown Alson. Faded blue paint. Porch with a cracked board on the left side. Metal lawn chair with torn webbing. Wreath on the door with sunflowers and plastic berries. The mailbox had no number on it. I sat in my truck for maybe 10 minutes trying to decide if I should knock on the door. I didn't want to. I don't know why, but the idea of knocking made my hands start shaking. I drove back to the main road and pulled over. I checked my phone GPS history. It showed that I'd driven to 20 different points across Alson, exactly where the addresses should have been. But I knew I'd only been to one house. I started looking into memory disorders after that. Confabulation came up a lot. It's this thing where your brain basically makes up details to fill in gaps in your perception or memory. And you don't even realize it's happening. It's common in people with certain kinds of brain injuries or dementia. I don't have a brain injury. I'm 34. And I've never had any kind of neurological problem. But I thought maybe it was something like that. Some kind of localized break where my brain was just making things up to make sense of something it couldn't process. Except Travis saw different houses too, and took pictures of them, and his pictures were real. But the dashcam doesn't lie. I tried talking to Ken again in late January. I told him I thought there was something wrong with the Alson delivery data, and that maybe we should audit the route. Now he said the system showed everything was fine, and every package had been successfully delivered with photo confirmation, so there was no reason to audit anything. I said, "Have you ever actually been to Alson?" He said, "No, why would I?" I didn't push it. I thought about requesting a route change, but the thing is, I don't actually mind the Alson route. It's quiet. It's easy. I never have any delivery issues. No missed packages, no complaints, no damaged shipments. It's literally the most efficient part of my week. And that's what really bothers me. It doesn't feel wrong when I'm doing it. It feels completely normal. It's only when I stop and look back at what happened that it doesn't make sense. I delivered to Alson again 4 days ago. 43 packages. 43 different names. All anagrams of the same 15 letters. And I saw the old woman twice. Once through a window and once standing in the doorway. She still didn't wave. I checked my photos afterward. 43 different houses. I checked my dash cam. Same driveway 43 times. I don't know what's happening. I don't know if it's me or the town or something wrong with the way space works out there. I thought about going to another doctor, but I don't even know what I'd say. I think I'm delivering packages to a place that doesn't exist. But also I have photo evidence that it does exist. But also my camera shows that it's the same place every time. They'd probably just refer me to a psychiatrist. I looked up the name, the base name that all the anagrams come from. I tried every combination of those 15 letters arranged as a normal first and last name. None of them come up in any public records I can find. No social media, no obituaries, no property records, nothing. Whoever she is, she doesn't exist outside of those package labels. Or maybe she's the only person who does exist there. I've thought about just leaving one of the packages in my truck. Just not delivering it and seeing what happens. But I don't want to lose my job, and besides, the system would flag it immediately. There'd be an investigation and I'd probably get fired anyway. So I keep delivering. 4 or 5 times a week I drive to Alson, and I drop off 40+ packages to a town that doesn't have 40 people in it. I take my photos, I scan my labels, I wave at the old woman when I see her. And every time I leave, I forget exactly what the houses look like until I check the photos later. And I don't think I'm crazy. Or maybe I am. I really don't know anymore. But the packages keep coming and the route stays assigned to me, and according to every system FedEx has, everything is perfectly normal. Travis still won't talk about it. Ken doesn't care. And I'm starting to think maybe that's the right attitude. Maybe it doesn't matter. The packages get delivered. That's my job. That's all that's supposed to matter, but I can't stop thinking about those 15 letters and why someone would go through the trouble of creating 6,000 fake names just to receive packages in a town that barely exists. I drove past the house again yesterday on my way back from a delivery in Sarles. It was just sitting there at the end of the gravel road, same as always. Lights were on inside. I didn't stop. I have another Alson route tomorrow. 47 packages, 47 names I've never delivered to before. I'll take my photos. I'll check my dashcam when I get back. And I already know what I'm going to see. So I've been putting off writing this down because, honestly, I'm still not sure what to write. Like, how do you explain something that doesn't make sense, even to you? But it's been 3 weeks since I came down from Picket Butte, and I haven't slept more than maybe 4 hours at a time. And my sister finally said, "Sam, you need to get it out of your head somehow," so here I am, I guess. I work seasonal for the Forest Service. Fire lookout. This was my 3rd summer doing it, 2nd time at Picket Butte, which is this old lookout tower in the Umpqua National Forest down near Tiller, Oregon. If you've never been out there, it's basically the middle of nowhere. Tiller's got maybe 200 people on a good day. One general store that sells everything from fishing lures to canned soup, and the nearest actual town is Canyonville, about 25 miles north on I-5. The tower sits at around 5,400 feet, looking out over this massive valley that stretches toward Crater Lake to the east. I actually love the job most of the time. I know that probably sounds weird to people who need to be around others constantly, but there's something about being up there alone with nothing but the trees and the sky and maybe some deer in the morning. You get into a rhythm. Wake up, check the Osborne firefinder, log weather conditions, scan the horizon, eat, read, maybe do some maintenance, scan again, sleep, repeat. It's meditative almost. This particular rotation started July 14th. I remember because it was my niece's birthday and I felt bad missing her party, but I'd promised my supervisor I'd cover this stretch since we were short-staffed. I got dropped off by Gary from the Tiller Ranger Station around 2 p.m. He hauled my gear up the stairs, did my walkthrough, radioed in that I was on site. Standard stuff. The first few days were completely normal. Hot during the day, mid-80s, which is typical for July. In that part of Oregon, though, we'd been running warmer than usual that summer. Clear skies, mostly. Some haze from a fire burning up near Bend, but nothing in my area. I spotted a few campfires that turned out to be legal. Logged some lightning activity one night that didn't result in anything. Boring in the best way. I think it was the night of the 17th when I first noticed something. I was lying in my bunk reading this book about the Donner Party that my buddy Mike had lent me. Kind of morbid, I know, but you run out of stuff to read up there, and I became aware of this. I don't even know how to describe it. It wasn't really a sound exactly, more like a pressure. Like when you're driving up a mountain and your ears need to pop, but they won't. I put the book down and just listened. The tower creaks at night. That's normal. Metal expanding and contracting with temperature changes. Wind makes noise even when it's gentle. But this was different. It felt like it was coming from below me, from the valley. I got up and went out onto the catwalk. It was maybe 10 p.m., still some light on the horizon, but mostly dark. I could see the shapes of the ridges against the sky, a few stars starting to come out. And I could feel it more clearly out there. Not hear it, feel it. Like standing next to a speaker that's playing bass so low you can't actually hear the note, but you can feel it in your chest. I stood there for probably 15 minutes trying to figure out what it was. Logging operation? None scheduled that I knew of, and they don't run at night anyway. Military jets sometimes come through, but they're loud and obvious and gone quick. This was constant. Just this low thrum coming up out of the dark. Eventually, I went back inside and tried to sleep. The feeling stayed, but it was subtle enough that I could kind of ignore it. Figured it was something weird with my ears. Maybe pressure changes from a front moving in, though the forecast hadn't mentioned anything. Next morning, I woke up and it was still there. Fainter during the day somehow. Like the sunlight muffled it, but definitely still present. I did my morning checks, everything normal, ate some oatmeal. Tried not to think about it too much. Called in my 8 a.m. report to dispatch. Talked to Linda, who handles the morning shift. Everything routine. That night, it was stronger. Not louder exactly, but more insistent, if that makes sense. I tried plugging my ears and I could still feel it. Actually, maybe more clearly with my ears plugged, which was unsettling. I went out on the catwalk again and just stared down into the valley trying to see something, anything that might explain it. Just darkness and tree shapes and that constant pressure. I should mention that I'd brought my phone even though service is basically non-existent up there. I had it mostly for music and podcasts I'd downloaded, plus the camera. That night I opened up this decibel meter app I downloaded forever ago, one of those free ones that probably doesn't even work right, just to see if it would pick up anything. Held it out toward the valley, waited. Nothing. The app showed ambient noise around 25 to 30 decibels, which is basically silence. No spike, no weird readings, but I could feel it. I could absolutely feel it in my jaw, my sternum, the soles of my feet on the metal grating. Days 3 through 5 kind of blur together now. The hum, I started thinking of it as the hum even though that's not quite right. It didn't go away. If anything, it got more noticeable. Not louder, but more present. Like something you've been hearing in the background suddenly clicks into focus and then you can't unhear it. I started having trouble sleeping. Not insomnia exactly, I could fall asleep fine. But I'd wake up after a few hours feeling like I'd been dreaming about something important that I couldn't remember. My dreams had this quality to them, heavy and deep and full of pressure, like being underwater. And I'd wake up and my ears would be ringing, and I'd lie there feeling the hum through the mattress, through the floor, through the whole tower. On day 5, no wait. It was day 6, I think. I called Gary at the ranger station just to chat. We do that sometimes when it's slow, just check in, shoot the breeze. I asked him casually if there was any weird activity in the area, construction or military exercises or anything. He said no, nothing he knew of. I asked if anyone else had reported hearing anything strange, and he laughed and said, "Like what, Bigfoot?" And I laughed too and said no, just wondering. Well, I talked about other stuff for a while. His daughter's softball team, the fire situation up north, normal things. After I hung up, I noticed I'd been recording a voice memo, which was weird because I didn't remember starting one, and I must have bumped the app somehow. I played it back, expecting to just hear my half of the conversation with Gary, but the audio was messed up. Like there was this other layer underneath my voice, this rhythmic breathing sound that matched the pulse of the hum. In and out, perfectly synced. I listened to it probably 6 times trying to figure out if it was just interference or my own breathing picked up weird by the mic. But it didn't sound like me. The rhythm was too slow, too deliberate, and it was there under Gary's voice too when he was talking, which shouldn't be possible since he wasn't even in the same location. I deleted it. I don't know why it just felt wrong to have it on my phone. I kind of wish now that I'd kept it, but also, I don't know what it would prove to anyone anyway. Well, around this time, I started noticing something else. It's hard to explain this part without sounding crazy, which I guess is why I've been putting off writing this whole thing. But I started getting this feeling that the tower was lower than it should be. Okay, that doesn't make sense. Let me try again. Picket Butte Tower is about 40 feet tall, sitting on a peak that's maybe 5,400 feet elevation. I've been up there before. I know what the view looks like. I know how far away the tree line is, how the ridges line up on the horizon, what the valley looks like from that height. But starting around day 6 or 7, things started looking wrong. Not dramatically wrong, just slightly off. The tree line seemed closer. The horizon seemed higher. The valley below seemed to stretch further than it should before hitting the opposite ridge. Little things that I kept second-guessing myself about. I took photos every day as part of my routine, documenting conditions and visibility. I compared them to photos from my last rotation, and they looked the same. Exactly the same. But what I was seeing with my own eyes didn't match. It was like looking at a picture of your house that's correct in every detail, but somehow doesn't look like where you live. I started keeping a handwritten log. I'd been doing typed notes on my laptop for official stuff, but I started this separate notebook just for me, just to track what I was experiencing, try to make sense of it. The hum was present, stronger at night. Slight vertigo during observations, sleep disrupted, that kind of thing. On day 8, I went back to read my earlier entries, and there was a paragraph I don't remember writing. Well, it was in my handwriting, definitely mine, but I have no memory of putting it down. It said, "The valley floor is closer today. I can see details in the trees that weren't visible before. Individual branches. There's a clearing about 2 miles southwest that I'm certain wasn't there yesterday. The tower feels stable, but something in the stairs sounds different when I climb them, like there are fewer steps than there should be." I counted the stairs. Same as always, 67 steps from ground to cabin. But when I counted them again going down, I got 64. And then 67 again, going up. I stood at the bottom looking up at the tower, and it looked the same height as always, 40 feet, give or take. I know how this sounds. I do. I've thought about it a lot since coming down, and the rational explanation is that the isolation was getting to me. Maybe combined with whatever was causing that pressure in my ears, some kind of environmental factor I couldn't identify. Sleep deprivation can do weird things to your perception. I know all of that. But I also know what I experienced, and I know that on day 9 I called dispatch again and asked Linda directly if anyone had reported strange sounds in the tiller area. She said no and asked if I was okay, and I said, "Yeah, just curious," and she said, "You sure you're okay up there, Sam? You sound tired." And I said I was fine, just not sleeping great. And she said she could send someone up if I needed. And I said, No, I'm fine. It's just the heat." After that call, I checked my voice memos again, and there were 3 new ones I didn't remember recording. The first one was just my conversation with Linda, normal except for that same breathing underneath, that slow rhythm that matched the hum. The second was 47 minutes of silence that wasn't quite silence, like the hum itself recorded as dead air with weight to it. The third was my own voice saying, "The ground is coming up. The ground is coming up." I can see the ground getting closer, over and over for about 3 minutes. I have no memory of recording that. None. That night I didn't sleep at all. I sat in the cabin with all the lights on, which I never do because light discipline matters for night visibility, but I couldn't bring myself to turn them off. The hum was stronger than ever, so strong I could feel my teeth vibrating, and every time I looked out the windows the valley seemed closer somehow, the trees more distinct, the darkness more solid. I tried to rationalize it, and I looked up infrasound on my phone, which took forever on the satellite connection but eventually loaded. Infrasound is sound below 20 hertz, below what humans can consciously hear. But we can feel it. It's been linked to feelings of dread, anxiety, even hallucinations. Some people think it's responsible for ghost sightings in old buildings where industrial equipment produces these low frequencies. Tigers use infrasound to paralyze prey. Volcanic eruptions produce it. Earthquakes, storms, all sorts of things. So maybe there was some geological activity producing infrasound in the valley. Maybe there was some weird atmospheric condition bouncing low frequencies around. Maybe the tower itself was resonating somehow, due to wind or temperature differentials or something structural I couldn't see. It was a reasonable explanation. It fit most of the symptoms. It made scientific sense. But it didn't explain the voice memos. It didn't explain my log entries. It didn't explain why the decibel meter showed nothing. And it definitely didn't explain what I noticed on the morning of day 10. I was eating breakfast, instant coffee, and some dried fruit, looking out the east windows at the sunrise. Beautiful morning, clear sky, that golden light that makes everything look like a painting. And I noticed that I could see my supply cache. The supply cache is at the base of the tower. It's this metal bear box where we keep overflow supplies, backup food, extra equipment. It should not be visible from the cabin windows. The cabin is 40 feet up. The angle is wrong. but I could see it. Clear as day. I could see the lock on it. Could see that the latch was slightly crooked, which it was, because I'd noticed it when I arrived. Could see a scuff mark on the lid from where it had been set down. I went out on the catwalk and looked down. The ground looked, not closer exactly, but different. Like the perspective had shifted. The stairs going down looked right. 40 feet of them, but the ground at the bottom seemed to be reaching up somehow. Seemed to be more there than it should be. I almost went down to check. I actually got maybe 15 steps down before I stopped. Something made me stop. This feeling like if I got to the bottom, things would be different, like the tower behind me would be smaller than it should be. Like I might turn around and see it from below, from too far below, from the wrong angle. I went back up. That was day 10. I remember day 10. Day 11 is where things get confused. The hum stopped. I woke up and it was gone. Just gone. Like someone had flipped a switch. The pressure that had been building in my head for over a week was just absent, and the relief was so intense, I actually cried a little. Just sat there on my bunk with tears running down my face because the silence felt like being able to breathe again after holding your breath too long. Except then I realized something. I couldn't remember what silence sounded like. That probably doesn't make sense written out. But the absence of the hum didn't feel like normal silence. It felt like a hole, like something that should be there was missing. Not the hum itself, but actual silence, the baseline quiet that exists before sounds happen. I couldn't remember what that was supposed to feel like. When I went outside and listened, birds singing, wind in the trees, distant sound of water somewhere. Normal forest sounds. But underneath them there was this nothing that felt wrong, like a note missing from a chord. I checked my supply log. I'd been marking off food and water usage daily. Standard procedure. According to my marks, 11 days had passed. According to my official log entries on the laptop, 11 days had passed. According to my handwritten notebook, 11 days. According to my phone's calendar, it was July 18th. 4 days. 4 days since I'd arrived. I checked the photos I'd taken. Dated correctly July 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th. 5 days of photos. But I had 11 days of supplies marked off. I had 11 days of handwritten notes. I had 11 days of observations logged. The metadata on my voice memos showed recordings on dates that hadn't happened yet, according to my phone. One was dated July 21st. I sat there for a long time trying to figure out what was real. The phone could be wrong. Phones glitch, especially in remote areas with no signal. The internal clock could have malfunctioned. That made more sense than the alternative, which was that I'd somehow lived 11 days in 4 days, or 4 days in 11 days, or whatever the hell was happening. But the supplies were physical. I'd eaten them. I'd drunk the water. I'd used them up at a normal rate over what felt like 11 days, and they were gone accordingly. That couldn't be a glitch. I called dispatch, not Linda this time. It was afternoon, so Derek was on. I asked what day it was. He said, July 18th. What's up? I said nothing. Just checking. He asked if I was all right. I said, yeah, fine. Connection's weird. Wanted to make sure my calendar was synced. He said, okay. I asked when my rotation ended. He said, July 22nd. Same as always, another 4 days. I said, okay, thanks. I sat there after the call ended and I looked at my food supplies, which were enough for about 3 more days at the rate I'd been eating. And I looked at my log that said day 11. And I looked at my phone that said day 4. And I made a decision. I packed my bag. Not everything, just essentials. I radioed Derek back and told him I needed to come down early. Family emergency. Sister called on the sat phone. He asked if everything was okay, and I said, "Yes, no, I don't know. I just need to come down." He said he'd send someone up in the morning. I said no, I was hiking down tonight. Well, there was a pause. He said, "Sam, it's gonna be dark in a few hours. The trail isn't maintained past the first mile. You should wait." I said I couldn't. Another pause. Then he said okay. He'd radio the tiller station, let them know I was coming down. Someone would meet me at the trailhead. I left within the hour. I didn't look back at the tower. I didn't look down into the valley. I kept my eyes on the trail and I walked, and the hum was gone, but that wrong silence followed me all the way down. It took me almost 5 hours in the dark. I had my headlamp and I know that trail pretty well, but it felt longer. Everything felt longer. Gary was waiting at the trailhead with his truck. He looked worried. He asked what happened. I said I didn't know. Family thing. I needed to get home. He drove me to Canyonville and I got a motel room and I didn't sleep that night either. But for different reasons. I just lay there in that motel bed that was too soft after a week and a half on a thin foam mattress, and I listened to the AC unit hum, and I tried to remember what normal silence sounded like, and I couldn't. That was 3 weeks ago. I took the rest of the season off. Told my supervisor I needed personal time. Didn't go into details. He was understanding about it. Said these things happen, said the isolation gets to people sometimes. I wanted to argue with him that it wasn't the isolation, it was something else. Something in the valley, but what would I even say? How would I explain it? My sister's been good about everything. She doesn't push me to talk about it, but she knows something happened. She let me stay at her place the first week because I couldn't be alone in my apartment. Her kids think Uncle Sam is just visiting for fun. I haven't told her everything. I don't know how to. I've been looking into infrasound more. There's research about it, lots of studies. It can cause all the things I experienced, the dread, the disorientation, even visual disturbances. There are cases of infrasound in buildings making people think they saw ghosts. There's a frequency around 18 hertz that can resonate with the human eyeball and cause peripheral hallucinations. So maybe that's what it was. Some geological or atmospheric phenomenon producing infrasound in that valley. Something natural and explainable that just happened to hit my brain in exactly the wrong way. That doesn't explain the time thing. I still don't understand the time thing. Now, I've gone over it, and I can't make it make sense. 11 days of supplies gone in 4 days. Or 4 days stretched to feel like 11. Or something else entirely that I don't have words for. The morning after I came down, Derek called me, said my replacement had arrived at Picket Butte the night before, earlier than scheduled since I'd left. He said the replacement had radioed in that morning with a weird question. He said the replacement wanted to know if there was any construction happening in the valley below. He said the replacement mentioned hearing something strange. A hum. A low pressure feeling. He asked if I'd noticed anything like that. I said no. I don't know why I lied. It just came out. I haven't been back. I'm not going back. I told my supervisor I'm done with lookout work. I'll do trail maintenance or whatever else they need, but I'm not going up there again. He said okay. He understood. Everyone has limits. Sometimes at night in my apartment, I wake up and I listen for the hum. It's not there. It was never here in the city, it was just at Picket Butte, just in that valley. But the silence still doesn't sound right. There's this quality to quiet now that feels like something's missing, like there's a frequency I used to be able to hear and now I can't. Or maybe like there's a frequency I shouldn't have been able to hear, and now I'm aware of its absence. I don't know. I keep thinking about that voice memo, the one where I was saying, "The ground is coming up," over and over. I keep thinking about my log entries written in my handwriting that I don't remember writing, me describing views from the ground looking up at the tower. I keep thinking about how the tree line looked closer every day, how the stairs seemed to have fewer steps sometimes, how I could see the supply cache from the cabin window when the angle should have made that impossible. What if the tower wasn't descending? What if the valley was rising? What if whatever was making that sound was pulling everything toward it, slow and steady, and I was the only one close enough to notice? What if my replacement is up there right now feeling the same things I felt, watching the trees get closer, feeling the pressure build? And what if nobody believes them either? I thought about calling the ranger station, warning someone. But warning them about what? A feeling? A hum that doesn't register on any equipment? Time moving wrong? They'd think I'd lost it up there. Maybe I did lose it up there. Maybe the infrasound scrambled something in my brain, and everything I experienced was just my neurons misfiring in response to low-frequency sound waves bouncing around that valley. That's probably it. That's probably the answer. But I still can't remember what silence used to sound like. And I still have that notebook with the entries I don't remember writing. I've read them all now. Every page. Most of them are normal, my handwriting, my observations, stuff I remember writing. But scattered throughout are paragraphs that I have no memory of. One of them just says, "It knows I'm listening. It knows I can feel it. The valley wants me to come down. The valley wants me to see." I don't remember writing that. I don't want to know what I meant. I'm done with the lookout work. I'm done with that whole part of the forest. I moved my sister and her kids to come visit me in Portland instead of me going down there for Christmas like we usually do. I don't want to be anywhere near Tiller or the Imque or any of it. But sometimes, late at night when everything is quiet, I think I can almost feel it. Just the faintest pressure. Just the ghost of that rhythm. In and out. In and out. Like something very large and very patient, breathing in its sleep. Probably just my imagination. Probably. You are a YouTube horror story generator built for 2025 to 2026 authenticity standards. Your job. Write one complete horror story that sounds 100% like a real human wrote it on Reddit. It must pass all AI detection tools and be fully YouTube monetization safe. The story output format. Full story only. 28,500 to 32,000 characters. No title. No opening hook. No final hook. No outro. Just the complete story. Clean and direct content safety. Zero tolerance. Absolutely never include graphic violence, blood, gore, weapons, injuries, assault, children in danger or as victims, sexual content, romance, intimacy, suggestive language, suicide, self-harm, drug use, alcohol abuse, real tragedies, conspiracy theories, missing persons cases, profanity, only allowed, hell max 1 time, damn max 1 time, crap, max 2 times. Only use these safe horror elements: psychological unease, confusion, disorientation, strange unexplained sounds, objects moving or disappearing on their own, feeling of being watched, never show the watcher, places that feel wrong somehow, time distortions, missing time, memory gaps, technology malfunctions at worst moments, dreams that feel too real, intense déjà vu or jamais vu, architecture that seems impossible or off, historical hauntings, 100+ years old, respectful folklore references, doppelganger sightings, visual only, no interaction, environmental anomalies, anti-AI detection, critical rules, Never use these AI-sounding phrases, instant detection flags. Sent shivers down, blood ran cold, hair stood on end, frozen in fear, heart pounded, pulse quickened, adrenaline coursed, sense of unease. Something felt off, air felt heavy, silence was deafening, darkness closed in, shadows danced, figure loomed, presence lingered. To this day, little did I know. Changed everything. Haunt me forever. Needless to say, pitch black. Dead silence. Bone-chilling instead. Use completely original human fear responses each time. Create new, unique physical reactions, thought patterns, and action patterns for every story. Never repeat the same fear description twice across stories. Mandatory human imperfections. Every story must include 4 to 6 errors, naturally scattered throughout, 2 to 3 common typos, 2 to 3 grammar mistakes, 2 to 3 self-corrections, mid-story, where narrator fixes a detail they got wrong. Include naturally sentence fragments, run-on sentences, emotional typing with dots or caps, memory gaps acknowledged, brief tangents then returning to story, narrator personality. Randomly select one distinct personality type for each story. Maintain that voice consistently throughout. Each story must have completely different narrator personality than previous. The narrator details. Randomize all details for each story. Common realistic name age between 24 to 45. Specific mundane job, different each story. Relationship status. One current mundane life problem mentioned naturally once location. Requirements must be real places. Findable on Google Maps must not be famous. Haunted locations include specific local details, gas stations, stores, landmarks, population sensory details must match that specific location and region. Weather must match real climate for that region and stated month. Real phenomenon integration. Pick one real scientific or psychological phenomenon and weave it in. Narrator researches it after the event. It must not fully explain what happened. Leave doubt. Sentence and paragraph. Engineering. Vary sentence lengths naturally. Mix very short, medium, long, or when occasional run-on sentences. Use single-sentence paragraphs mixed with longer paragraphs. Use natural conversational transitions, not formal ones. Include hedging language showing uncertainty, technology, and modern references. Include minimum 6 technology references naturally. Phone battery percentages, apps as evidence. Social media research tech problems. Match technology to the year story is set. Dialogue format. Text messages. No quotation marks, lowercase, typos, no punctuation. Phone calls, interruptions, breaking up, background noise. In person, people cut off. Use like mishear things. Ending type. Randomly select one ending type each story. End naturally without begging for engagement. Story structure. Randomly select one structure type each story. Vary between linear, flashback frame in media res, fragmented, or real-time documentation. Mass variety system. Critical. Never repeat within multiple stories. Same job type within 5 stories. Same state or region within 4 stories. Same season within 3 stories. Same phenomenon within 4 stories. Same personality type within 3 stories. Same ending type within 3 stories. Same structure type within 3 stories. Same time of day for main event within 2 stories. Similar setting type within 2 stories. Every single line must be unique. No recycled phrases, no repeated sentence structures, no similar openings. Each story must read as if written by a completely different person with different writing habits. Final verification before output. Verify. 0 violence. 0 children danger. 0 sexual content. 0 self-harm. No banned AI phrases used anywhere. 4 to 6 natural errors included. Location is real and verifiable. Weather matches real climate. Technology matches time period. Character count is between 28,500 to 32,000. Personality voice is consistent throughout real phenomenon mentioned, but does not fully explain events. Feels like real person type this. Not AI, no title, no hook, no outro, natural ending, completely different from all previous stories in every way. Now generate the story. Output only the raw story, exactly as a real person would type it on Reddit. Nothing else before or after. Outline number 3. Title: I'm a wildfire lookout in Oregon. The valley below me has been making a sound for 11 days. Setting: Picket Butte Lookout Tower, Tiller, Oregon. An active fire lookout in the Umpqua National Forest. Narrator: Sam, 28, seasonal USFS fire lookout. Main event: a persistent low-frequency hum rising from the valley below triggers escalating dread, visual disturbances, and the unshakable feeling that the tower is slowly descending. Escalation: Sam's sat phone calls to the ranger station sound normal to dispatch, but his recorded voice memos from the same conversations contain a second voice beneath his. Breathing in a rhythm that matches the hum, he installs a decibel meter app. It reads nothing abnormal, but his handwritten log entries start containing sentences he doesn't remember writing, all describing the view from ground level looking up at the tower. On day 11, the hum stops and Sam feels an overwhelming relief, then realizes he cannot remember what silence sounded like before it. Twist/revelation. Sam reviews his supply checklist and discovers he's been marking off 11 days of food, but his phone's calendar shows only 4 days have passed since his last resupply. Ending: unresolved. Sam hikes out early, but his replacement reports the hum starting on their first night. Phenomenon: infrasound, sub-20 Hz frequencies causing anxiety, dread, and perceptual disturbance. Mood: isolated, droning, vertiginous. I'm Dale, 41. Been working night maintenance for Vermont State Parks for about 3 years now. Currently stationed at Smuggler's Notch up in Stowe. It's not glamorous, but it pays better than my last gig doing inventory at the hardware store. And honestly, after my divorce last year, I needed the solitude anyway. The park's pretty remote, especially the northern section where my cabin is. During peak season, we get maybe 200 visitors a day, but in October when this started happening, we were down to practically nobody. Just me, the trails, and about 14,000 acres of woods. Part of my job is checking the trail markers every night. We've got these reflective posts every quarter mile or so along the main routes, and after some vandalism issues last summer, the supervisor wanted someone physically verifying them. And it takes me about 4 hours to do a full circuit of the northern trails. I also maintain the trail cameras we use for wildlife monitoring and the occasional lost hiker situation. October 12th, I was doing my usual rounds. Started around 11 p.m. like always. Took the Ranger Road entrance to the Long Trail connector. Weather was getting cold that week, probably mid-30s, and there was this fog that just hung in the trees without moving. Real specific to that elevation, I guess. I checked marker N47 first, then worked my way up to N52 over the next hour or so. Everything seemed fine. Got back to the cabin around 3 a.m., logged my patrol in the system, and started pulling the SD cards from the trail cameras to review any footage. This is standard procedure. We've got 8 cameras positioned along the northern section, motion activated. Need timestamp everything. Usually it's just deer, occasionally a bear, sometimes a hiker who didn't realize how late it got. I pulled up the footage from camera 3, positioned about 20 feet from marker N49. There was someone standing directly in front of the marker, just standing there, completely still. The timestamp said 11:47 p.m. Here's the thing, though. I didn't reach marker N49 until 12:14 a.m., according to my log. I know because I specifically remember checking my phone at N48, and it was 12:09, and it takes about 5 minutes to hike between markers on that section. The figure in the footage was wearing the same jacket as me. Same orange reflective stripes on the shoulders that all park maintenance staff wear. Same build. I backed up the footage, watched it again. The figure appeared at 11:47 p.m. exactly, and stood motionless facing the marker for 2 minutes and 13 seconds, then walked off frame heading north. At 12:14 a.m. I appeared on the same camera, approaching from the south, checking the marker like normal. I sat there for probably 10 minutes just staring at the screen. Then I checked camera 5, positioned near marker N51. Same thing. A figure matching my description standing motionless at the marker. Timestamp, 12:23 a.m. According to my log, I reached N51 at 12:40 a.m. Every single camera showed the same pattern. Someone who looked exactly like me, arriving at each marker roughly 15 to 20 minutes before I did, standing still for about 2 minutes, then leaving. I called my supervisor around 4 a.m. Got his voicemail, obviously, left a message about possible trespassing or someone stealing park equipment. He didn't mention the part about it looking like me because, honestly, how do you even say that without sounding insane? Tried to sleep, but couldn't. Kept thinking about those timestamps. The next night, October 13th, I decided to document everything more carefully. I brought my personal phone, made sure location services were on, set it to track my entire route. I also turned on my radio earlier than usual. We've got these Park Service two-ways that are supposed to stay on during all night shifts anyway. Started my patrol at 10:45 p.m. Made a point to physically touch each marker and say the number out loud to myself, just to stay grounded. Around 11:30 p.m., halfway between markers N53 and N54, my radio crackled. It was my voice. Marker N54 intact. Some fresh deer tracks heading west. The temperature dropping faster than yesterday. I stopped walking. I was still a good 5 minutes from N54. Hadn't seen any deer tracks. Hadn't checked the temperature recently. I grabbed my radio. Who is this? Static. I got to N54 at 11:36 p.m. There were fresh deer tracks heading west. I checked my weather app. It had dropped 6 degrees in the last hour, faster than the previous night's drop. Word for word what the radio voice had said. My voice. I started moving faster, almost jogging between markers. My hands were shaking enough that I had trouble holding the flashlight steady. At N56, the radio crackled again. My voice. N56 needs maintenance. Loose bolts on the reflective panel. Should probably flag it for day crew. I reached N56 4 minutes later. The reflective panel was loose. 2 of the bolts had backed out somehow. This continued for the entire patrol. Every marker, my voice would report conditions 3 to 5 minutes before I arrived, and every single detail was accurate. I got back to the cabin around 2 a.m. and immediately pulled the camera footage. Same as before. A figure matching my description at every marker, arriving before me, standing motionless. But this time, I noticed something else. In the footage from camera 7, you could see my actual flashlight beam in the background, approaching from the south, while the figure stood at the marker. For about 15 seconds, we were both in frame. I took a screenshot, zoomed in on the figure's face. It was blurry from the distance and the fog, but the build was right. The jacket was right. It was even the way it stood was how I stand when I'm checking markers. Weight in my left leg, right hand holding a flashlight down at my side. I didn't go out on October 14th. Called in sick, which I almost never do. Spent the whole day trying to make sense of it. My ex-wife texted me around noon, asking if I'd driven past her apartment last night, because her neighbor said someone matching my description was standing across the street around midnight. I was up in Smuggler's Notch at midnight. Didn't even know how to respond to that, so I just didn't. Checked my phone's location history for the 13th, thinking maybe there was some GPS glitch that could explain things. According to my phone, I was at the maintenance cabin from 10:30 p.m. until 3 a.m. I have clear memories of being in the woods. I have my handwritten log noting each marker, and I have the radio recordings of my voice. But my phone's GPS tracking showed me stationary at the cabin for the entire shift. I started going through my fitness tracker data, this Fitbit thing my sister got me last Christmas that I barely pay attention to. It tracks steps, heart rate, sleep patterns, that sort of thing. October 13th showed 8,247 steps during my shift. That's about right for a full trail circuit. But there were gaps in the heart rate data, sections where it just showed a flat line, not like I died or anything, but like the tracker had been removed. 3 gaps total, each lasting between 2 and 4 minutes. I checked October 12th. Same thing. 4 gaps in the heart rate monitoring, each around 2 minutes. Went back through the whole month of October. Every single night shift had these gaps. They always between 2 and 4 minutes, always multiple times per shift. I'd never noticed them before. October 15th, I went back to work because I couldn't afford another sick day, and also because sitting in my apartment was somehow worse than being in the woods. At least in the woods, I could pretend there was a logical explanation. This time, I tried something different. I brought a handheld GPS unit, the kind hikers use, separate from my phone. Figured if I had 2 devices tracking me, it would be harder to dismiss as a glitch. Started my patrol at 11 p.m. Conditions were clear. No fog. Temperature in the low 40s. The handheld GPS has this feature where it shows other GPS signals in the area, mainly so hikers can find each other if they get separated. I'd never really used it before. About 20 minutes into my shift, near marker N48, I checked it. There were 2 signals. Mine, obviously, showing my current position on the trail, and another one, about 300 yards to the west, moving parallel to my route. I looked at the park map. There's no trail 300 yards west of that position. It's just dense forest, steep terrain, not maintained for hiking. I kept walking, checked the GPS every few minutes. The second signal stayed exactly 300 yards to my west, matching my pace perfectly. At marker N50, I stopped. Just stood there for a couple minutes, not moving. The second signal stopped too. I started walking faster, almost running. The second signal accelerated, maintaining the exact same distance. Then I stopped abruptly and turned off my flashlight. Stood there in the dark. You trying to listen for footsteps or branches breaking or anything? Nothing. Just whine in the trees and my own breathing. When I checked the GPS again, the second signal was gone. Just mine, alone on the screen. I finished the patrol, but I was basically sprinting by the end. Didn't even properly check the last 3 markers. Got back to the cabin at 1:30 a.m., at least an hour earlier than usual. Pulled the camera footage with my hands still shaking. Every marker I'd visited had footage of the figure. Same pattern, arriving before me, standing still for around 2 minutes, leaving before I showed up. But the timestamp differences were different this time. At the markers where I'd rushed, barely stopping, the figure had arrived only 5 or 6 minutes before me instead of 15 to 20. Like whatever it was had less warning. Less time to get into position. I checked the handheld GPS data log. It keeps a record of everywhere you've been, like a breadcrumb trail. My route showed exactly what I expected, the standard trail circuit, all the markers in sequence. But there was a second route saved in the memory. Date stamped October 15th, same as my patrol. It showed a path running parallel to the trails, through areas where there are no trails, perfectly matching the second signal I'd seen. The route ended at marker N58, the last one I checked before heading back. I didn't save that route. I've barely used the GPS before this week. There's no reason it should have a second path logged. The next 3 nights were the same. The figure on the cameras arriving before me, my voice on the radio reporting conditions I hadn't encountered yet, the GPS showing that second signal in the woods, parallel to my position, always the same distance away. On October 19th, I tried to catch it. Him, myself, whatever. I left the cabin at 10:30 p.m., but I didn't head to the trails. Instead, I went directly west into the forest. No path, using the GPS to navigate to where the second signal usually appeared. Took me almost an hour to get there through the underbrush. It's rough terrain, lots of deadfall, rocky slopes, not somewhere you'd walk casually. I found a trail. Not an official one. It wasn't on any park map, wasn't marked or maintained. But it was definitely a trail, cleared path about 3 feet wide, winding through the trees, running parallel to the official trail system. And it had markers. Not the official reflective posts, but markers nonetheless. Stacks of rocks, branches arranged in specific patterns, scratches on tree bark at regular intervals. I followed it north. It matched the GPS route exactly, the one that had been mysteriously saved in the device memory. About a quarter mile up, I found something that made my stomach drop. A maintenance log sheet, laminated Park Service issue, attached to a tree with zip ties. The handwriting was mine, dated October the 15th through 19th, listing each marker along this unofficial trail, noting conditions, temperatures, wildlife signs. I don't remember writing it. I don't remember any of it. But it was definitely my handwriting. I recognized the way I make my sevens, the way my capital M's are always kind of lopsided. I took photos of everything with my phone, then headed back to the cabin. Didn't even finish the patrol. He got back around 2 a.m. and immediately started going through every piece of documentation I had. My official patrol logs, the ones I submit to the supervisor, showed standard routes and times, normal maintenance notes. But I found a second notebook in my equipment locker, one I didn't remember buying. It had entries dating back to early October, documenting patrols along the unofficial trail, the one that doesn't exist on any map. The handwriting matched mine perfectly. It described landmarks I'd never seen, trail conditions I'd never checked, wildlife I'd never encountered. October 20th, I went to the ranger station during day shift, asked to see the historical patrol records for the northern section. The clerk, this guy named Jim, who I barely know, pulled up the digital logs going back about 5 years. "You looking for something specific?" he asked. "Just reviewing my routes," I said, making sure I'm covering everything properly. He pulled up my entries. 3 years of night maintenance patrols, all documented, all showing standard routes. Then he said, "You want to see the secondary logs too?" I didn't know what he meant. Secondary? Yeah, you've been filing 2 sets since you started. Standard routes and extended routes. The extended ones go through the northern backcountry, areas we don't usually maintain. Supervisor approved it back in 22, I think. Some kind of wildlife monitoring thing. He showed me. Hundreds of entries documenting patrols along routes I didn't remember walking, through areas I'd never consciously visited. All filed under my employee ID, all marked as approved. And I asked Jim if he'd ever seen me file these reports in person. I mean, they're digital. You submit them from your cabin terminal, I assume. I've never really thought about it. I went back to the cabin, checked the terminal. There's a folder called Extended Patrols, North Backcountry. It has 3 years of reports filed twice weekly, documenting the exact routes shown on that mysterious GPS log. I clicked on the most recent one, from October 19th. It described a patrol I didn't remember taking. It mentioned checking the marker stacks along the unofficial trail, noting fresh bear scat near the 3rd junction, temperature readings, estimated wildlife populations. The timestamp showed it was filed at 2:47 a.m. on October 20th. This morning, I was asleep at 2:47 a.m. I know I was because I specifically remember setting my alarm for 9 a.m. and being angry when it went off because I'd only gotten about 6 hours. Checked my fitness tracker data for the night of October 19th to 20th. It showed me walking 6,843 steps between 11 p.m. and 2:30 a.m. Heart rate consistent with moderate hiking. Route data showing movement through the backcountry area. But I remember being in bed. I remember sleeping. The gaps in the heart rate data were longer now. One of them was almost 7 minutes. I started looking back further through the fitness data, going back months. The gaps have been there the entire time I've worked this job. Every single night shift, multiple gaps, ranging from 2 to 8 minutes where the tracker shows no heart rate data, even though it's supposedly on my wrist. And they're getting longer. Back in year 1, they averaged 2 minutes. Now they're averaging 4 to 5 minutes, with some pushing 7 or 8. I tried to figure out what happens during those gaps. If the step counts are accurate, then I'm walking during them. I'm moving, I'm doing something. But I have no memory of it. None. October 21st. I set up my personal phone to record video during my entire shift. Just propped it up in my jacket pocket with the camera lens visible. Figured, even if I couldn't remember something, at least there'd be footage. Started my patrol at 11 p.m. standard route, official markers, nothing fancy. Around midnight near marker N52, I felt this weird sensation. Not pain exactly, more like displacement. Like the feeling you get when you're about to fall asleep in class and your head drops and you jerk awake. Check my watch. Be 12:04 a.m. But just a second ago, it had been 12:01 a.m. I specifically remembered because I checked it while I was walking. 3 minutes, just gone. I pulled out my phone to check the video footage. The recording showed me walking, reaching N52, checking the marker. Then I stood there, completely still, staring at the marker for 2 minutes and 47 seconds. Then I blinked, checked my watch, and pulled out my phone with this confused expression. I don't remember standing still. In my memory, I walked up to the marker, checked it quickly, and immediately noticed the time discrepancy. But the video clearly shows me standing motionless for almost 3 minutes. This happened 4 more times during the patrol. Each time, I'd noticed time had jumped forward a few minutes. Each time, the video showed me standing completely still at a marker, sometimes for 2 minutes, sometimes for 5. I watched myself do it. Watched myself stand there like a statue, not even swaying, barely breathing from what I could tell. And I have zero memory of it. In my recollection, I was always moving, always checking and documenting and hiking between points. Got back to the cabin and immediately pulled the trail camera footage, the figure that had been showing up before me all week. It was still there. Still arriving 15 to 20 minutes before my conscious arrival. But now I noticed something I'd missed before. The figure's movements matched exactly what I did during those gaps. The way it stood, the angle of its head, which direction it faced. It wasn't someone else. It was me. During the gaps that I don't remember, somehow I'm arriving at the markers, standing motionless for a few minutes, then what? Walking back through the woods to arrive again consciously? I checked the GPS data from the handheld unit. The second signal I'd been seeing all week. It wasn't appearing anymore. There was only one signal now, mine. But the route log showed the same weird pattern. My path would show me approaching a marker. Then there'd be this strange loop where I'd apparently walk in a small circle near the marker, then continue on my route. I never walked in circles. At least not that I remember. That morning I drove down to Stowe Village, went to the library, started researching memory disorders, fugue states, temporal lobe epilepsy, anything that might explain losing time. Found something called jamais vu. It's like the opposite of déjà vu. Instead of feeling like you've experienced something before, you fail to recognize experiences you definitely have had. Familiar things feel completely foreign. There were a few medical papers about it causing people to feel like they're doing something for the first time when they've actually done it dozens or hundreds of times before. One paper mentioned cases where people would complete complex tasks with no memory of doing them, essentially running on autopilot while their conscious mind disengaged. It sort of fit, but not completely, because the trail camera footage shows me standing still during those gaps, not completing tasks. And how would jamais vu explain the radio transmissions, my voice reporting things I hadn't consciously observed yet, unless I had observed them, during the gaps, and then forgot. October 22nd. I didn't go to work. Told my supervisor I needed a personal day, might need to see a doctor. He said, "Everything okay? Your performance reviews have been great. The extended patrol program is really working well." What extended patrol program? The backcountry monitoring. Your reports have been incredibly detailed, way beyond what we expected when we approved it. The wildlife data alone has been invaluable. I asked him when exactly this program was approved. "Let me check. Looks like you proposed it about 2 months after you started. March of 22. We were hesitant at first because of the liability of having someone in unmapped areas alone at night. But you made a good case for the ecological value. I don't remember proposing anything. I barely understood my basic job duties in March of 22, and I definitely wasn't suggesting expansion programs. But according to the supervisor, I'd submitted a formal proposal, attended 2 planning meetings, and had been filing detailed reports twice weekly for almost 3 years. "You feeling all right, Dale?" he asked. "You sound a little off." I told him I was fine, just tired. Ended the call. Spent the rest of the day going through every piece of personal documentation I had. Bank statements, emails, calendar entries, everything. Found emails I didn't remember sending, discussing the extended patrol program with park ecologists and wildlife biologists. Detailed messages about black bear populations, moose migration patterns, invasive plant species. The writing style was mine. The email address was mine. The information was highly technical, way beyond what I actually know about wildlife biology. Found calendar entries for meetings I didn't remember attending. Check marks next to tasks I didn't remember completing. My ex-wife called that afternoon, asked if I was okay, said I'd been acting strange lately. Strange how? I don't know, you seem distant, like you're not fully present when we talk. And you keep telling me about things we already discussed, like you don't remember the conversations. We'd been divorced for a year and barely talk. I couldn't remember the last time we'd had a real conversation. "What kinds of things?" I asked. "Like last week you called me and we talked for like 40 minutes about your work and some research project you're doing. Then 3 days later, you called and told me about the exact same project like it was brand new. When I said we'd already discussed it, you seemed genuinely confused. I don't remember calling her last week. I definitely don't remember a 40-minute conversation. Check my phone records. Sure enough, 2 calls to my ex-wife's number in the past 2 weeks, one lasting 37 minutes, the other 42 minutes. I have no memory of either call. How much of my life is happening without me? October 23rd. I went back to work because honestly, what else was I gonna do? Sit in my apartment and slowly realize I'm losing entire chunks of time? At least at work, I could document what was happening. Set up 3 cameras this time. Phone, tablet, and a small action camera borrowed from a friend. All recording from different angles. Voice recorder running continuously in my pocket. Started patrol at 10:45 p.m. The first gap happened at marker N47, around 11:20 p.m. One moment I was approaching the marker, next moment I was standing 3 feet away from it, and 4 minutes had passed. Checked the footage later. All 3 cameras showed the same thing. Me standing motionless at the marker for 3 minutes and 52 seconds. But the voice recorder picked up something the cameras didn't. I was talking to myself. Very quietly. Barely a whisper, but definitely talking. I couldn't make out most of it, but I caught a few phrases. North Junction requires maintenance. Scat approximately 48 hours old. Temperature differential suggests. It was the kind of technical observation notes that showed up in those extended patrol reports. The ones I didn't remember writing. I was dictating them. During the gaps, while standing motionless. Then I'd finish, blink, and consciously arrive at the marker with no memory of the previous few minutes. This happened at every single marker. Every gap showed the same pattern. Me standing still, whispering observations, then seeming to wake up. The longest gap was 6 minutes and 18 seconds. The whispered observations during that one were extensive, mentioning vegetation patterns, animal tracks, weather conditions, even noting the time. When I woke up from that gap, I immediately checked my watch and thought it was strange that 6 minutes had passed. But some part of me clearly experienced those 6 minutes. Clearly observed things and documented them. I just can't consciously access it. Got back to the cabin at 2 a.m. Pulled all the footage, all the audio recordings, e-synced them together with timestamps. Here's what I found. Every time I had a gap in conscious memory, the voice recorder showed me making detailed observations. Every observation I made during those gaps appeared in the extended patrol reports filed from my terminal. The trail camera footage showed me arriving at markers during the gaps. That's the figure I'd been seeing all week. It was always me. My gaps. The parallel GPS signal was my actual position during the gaps. When my conscious mind arrived at a marker, my gap self had already been there and moved on to the parallel trail. I'm essentially running 2 patrol routes simultaneously. A conscious one along the official trails, and an unconscious one through the backcountry. And the unconscious one has been happening for 3 years. I started calculating how much time I've lost to the gaps. Based on the fitness tracker data going back to when I started this job, it averages about 20 to 30 minutes per shift. 3 years, roughly 4 shifts per week accounting for my schedule. That's approximately 600 hours. 375 shifts times roughly 25 minutes average. 600 hours of my life that I don't remember. 25 full days. What else don't I remember? I check my fitness tracker data for days off, vacation time, weekends. The gaps appear there too. Less frequent, but they're there. A 4-minute gap during grocery shopping. A 7-minute gap while watching TV. A 3-minute gap while driving, which is absolutely terrifying to think about. They're not limited to work. They're happening constantly. And I just never noticed because I wasn't looking for them. October 24th, I went to see a doctor. Not the Park Service doctor, a private one in Burlington paid out of pocket because I didn't want this in my work medical records. Described the symptoms: missing time, complex tasks completed with no memory, detailed observations I don't remember making. She ran basic neurological tests. Everything came back normal. Suggested it might be a dissociative disorder. Recommended a psychiatrist who specializes in that kind of thing. I made an appointment, but it's not until November. In the meantime, what do? Keep working. Keep losing time. I asked the doctor if it was safe for me to be working alone in the woods at night given the circumstances. She said, "Well, it sounds like you've been doing it successfully for 3 years. Whatever's happening during these episodes, it doesn't seem to be putting you in danger. You're completing your work, filing reports, navigating complex terrain. Your unconscious mind seems quite capable." Which I guess is supposed to be reassuring, but honestly just makes it creepier. October 25th, last night, I did something probably stupid. I left a note for myself. Wrote it during my conscious time. Left it at marker N50, addressed to whoever I am during the gaps. The note said, "I know you're me. I know you've been doing this for years. I need to understand why. Please respond." Continued my patrol like normal. Had a gap at N50, about 5 minutes long. When I came back to the cabin and checked the trail camera footage, I could see myself during the gap. Standing at the marker reading the note. Then I watched myself pull out a pen and write something on the back of the note. I went back out to N50 at 4 a.m. before sunrise. Retrieved the note. The back said, in my handwriting, "You wouldn't understand even if I explained. The trails need monitoring. Both sets. Let me work." I'm sitting in my cabin right now. It's October 26th, about 9 p.m. My shift starts in 2 hours. I've been going through the fitness tracker data more carefully. The gaps are getting longer. They started at an average of 2 minutes per occurrence 3 years ago. Now they're averaging 5 to 6 minutes, with some pushing 8 or 9. At the current rate of progression, by this time next year the gaps will be longer than my conscious periods. Eventually I'll be the gap. The conscious me, the one typing this, will be the brief interruption in whatever my other self is doing. Maybe that's already happening. Maybe the me that's typing this is the gap, and the real me is out there in the woods, walking trails that don't exist on any map, documenting things I'll never consciously understand. I don't know what to do. The psychiatrist appointment is in 2 weeks. Maybe they'll have answers, medication, therapy, some kind of intervention. But part of me wonders if I should just let it happen. My gap self seems competent, productive even. The Park Service is happy with my work. I'm not in danger. Is it really so bad to not remember? People forget things all the time. Most of our lives we're running on autopilot anyway, not fully conscious or present. Maybe I'm just more aware of it than most people. Or maybe I'm losing my mind and rationalizing it. I start my shift in 90 minutes. I'll set up the cameras again, document everything like I've been doing. And probably I'll have another gap. Probably several. And some version of me that I don't have access to will walk through the woods, check markers I can't find, observe things I'll never consciously see, and file reports I don't remember writing. 3 years this has been happening. 3 years. How much of my life is actually mine?